Hey everybody, how's it going? Day 3 video coming at you today. We have a lot to cover, so we're actually going to do this video in 2 parts. The first part is going to be some stuff that you guys did yesterday, as well as some stuff that we probably need to work into our conversation today. A lot of what we're going to talk about here, you're also going to find in your mapping group. We're putting that together as we speak, so hopefully we're going to have something for you as soon as you come into class today, I guess, since you're listening to me. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I want to do is talk about some of the things that went well yesterday, some of the things hopefully you picked up yesterday, and then we're going to improve on some things yesterday. For instance, several of you commented that you couldn't see my notes on the board yesterday, so we're going to try with a red marker. Some people said they think that would help. Let's start with something we need to know. The word is culture. We use this word all the time, but it's not often the easiest word to understand. Culture is a big concept. It means a whole lot of things, so we need to understand what it means. When we think about culture, we think about simply the way of life that someone follows. All right, there is no set one culture. That does not exist. Everybody kind of has their own, but culture kind of develops amongst a group of people. Yes, I can have my own customs. I can bring my own traditions to a society. But together, collectively, as that society, we create a culture. The bigger that culture gets, eventually it becomes our next term, which is a civilization. Now, in our last class period, we used the word civilization. A lot of people were asking me, they said, Mr. Brown, Miss Emmerich, what does that mean? What does civilization actually talking about? Well, here's what it's talking about. A civilization is simply a complex culture. There we go. All right, it's a complex culture, but there's more to it than that. It's not just complex culture. It's got to have large numbers. So you're going to have large numbers of people. To have a culture, you don't need a large number of people. To have a culture, you need a couple people. You can have a group of friends, and you guys have a culture amongst your friends. To have a civilization, you need large numbers. All right, that's what kind of defines the two. So one culture is in the other, civilization. So you have your large numbers of people, and finally, you guys all have common elements. All civilizations that have ever existed on the planet Earth all have the same 6 characteristics. In fact, it is the thing that kind of categorizes a civilization as such. They all have the same things in common. Here we go. The first one, every civilization has cities. Cities don't have to be big. Cities can be relatively small. Early civilizations might have had cities that had, let's say, 100 or 200 people in them. But as soon as they start developing cities in which they have city centers, like what you guys did in the mapping group the last class period when you created those little civilizations, that's what a city is. It has to have certain things in that city or associated with that city. As long as it has those things, it is a city. The second one, it has to have government. All right, now government's going to be a little bit different than what we think of as government. We think government is going to have a legislative body and a president and all that kind of stuff. That is government. It is a form of government. Early civilizations are going to have government that are going to look more like kings, queens, or even dictators. A lot of times also, government is going to go hand in hand. I'll put it down here at the bottom. It's going to go hand in hand with religion. Now, when we think the word religion in 2014, it's going to look a lot different than religion then. Remember, early civilizations were what's called polytheistic. Poly is plural, theistic is religion. They have multiple gods, multiple religions. There is no one God. One God is monotheistic, to have one God or one main religion. That's not this. Polytheistic is what we were kind of working with in these early civilizations. They gave different gods, different spirits to different things that were happening. Think about Native American history, how you know they had a sun god, a moon god, a star god, a tree god. All early civilizations kind of worked off that same concept. We're going to see it in Egypt, we're going to see it in Mesopotamia, we're going to see it in India and in China. So those places, A lot of them even still exist. When you look at Buddhism or Hinduism, there is no one main god, especially Hinduism, which has something like 8,000 gods or something like that, all right? So it's not uncommon at all for there to be polytheism in these early civilizations. Let's go to the next one. I'm going to work right over here. Our next concept is social structure. So yesterday and the day before, we were working with a term, it's called hierarchy. For a lot of you, I said hierarchy is simply a class system. You have an upper class, a middle class, a lower class. Social structure works the same way. You have rich people, you have poor people, you have a working class, you have a elderly population, a population that's too young to work. Everybody has a role. Social systems create for that role. The most powerful people, oftentimes the most wealthy people or the most religious people, tend to elevate to the top. Everybody else just kind of falls somewhere in between. Every civilization has writing. Now, writing is kind of the X factor for a civilization because writing looks different depending on where you're at. In Egypt, writing would have looked like hieroglyphics. All right, that's not exactly a written language like we're used to seeing. In Mesopotamia, you would have found cuneiform. Other places, you just simply have paintings on a wall. So language, spoken language, doesn't really count here. It has to be written down. So we ask ourselves, what was early writing actually used for? It wasn't writing stories, it wasn't writing letters or anything like that. It was simply used for record keeping. If I trade this with this, I got to know what I traded. If I know there was some deer or buffalo that were hanging around in this area, let me go ahead and write that down so I remember it. That's all it was used for. Finally, one that kind of goes kind of unmentioned or unthought of for early civilizations, for all civilizations, is art. One of the things that happens when you have a growing food supply is that you have specialization. I know we talked about it yesterday or the day before in our writing group, that when you have more food, it enables people to not farm or not hunt. If my job, Miss Emmerich's job, has always been to go out and hunt for food or to go out and try and find the next deer or buffalo to eat, and all of a sudden we got extra food, I don't have to do that. I have a lot of free time in my hands. I'm going to use that free time to now create. I'm going to make art, and I'm going to make sculptures and things like that for the rich people who can pay me to do it. Also, it's around this time that architecture starts to come in. So think about the giant temples you've seen in like Athens and Sparta and Greece and all those places, and also think about the pyramids in Egypt. The pyramids in Egypt are built right around this time, about 5,000, 6,000 years ago, as a means of basically saying, hey, we got a lot of money, a lot of resources, and a lot of people just standing around. Let's put them to work and build some really cool temples up to the gods. All right, that is all the stuff that we should have done yesterday or the day before that we were just now getting caught up on. So hopefully you're getting that. Hopefully you've been pausing it, stopping it, rewinding it to make sure you get all these things. To recap, culture, the way of life that someone follows. It's a couple people, a small group of people, they all kind of do the same things. Civilization is a complex culture. It has large numbers of people. All these people share common elements. Cities, government, religion, social structure, writing, and art. These are all characteristics of all civilizations that have ever existed anywhere in the world. This is part one of this video. Part two is going to be coming up very shortly. It's going to be a lot shorter. And in that part, we're going to start beginning to talk about Mesopotamia, India, China, and Egypt, where I think the focus is going to be more on Mesopotamia. So it's going to be very brief, it's going to be very short. Stay tuned for that. We're going to have more on that in the mapping group.